My name is Ancient Cluse, and what I'm about to tell you will challenge everything you thought you knew about human civilization. 3 years ago, I was just another archaeologist buried in dusty artifacts and academic papers. Today, I stand before you as someone who has uncovered the most extraordinary secret in human history. It all began with a single photograph sent to me by a colleague in Peru. The image showed carved symbols on a stone wall deep in the Amazon rainforest. These weren't just any symbols. They were identical to markings I had studied in Egyptian tombs, Aboriginal cave paintings in Australia, and ancient ruins in Cambodia. The impossible part? These civilizations never had contact with each other, yet they shared the exact same complex symbolic language. I remember staring at that photograph for hours, my coffee growing cold as my mind raced with possibilities. How could isolated cultures separated by oceans and thousands of years create identical symbols? The academic in me demanded logical explanations, but something deeper, call it intuition, whispered that I was looking at evidence of something far more profound. Within weeks, I had assembled a small team and secured funding for an expedition to Peru. My colleagues thought I was chasing shadows, but I couldn't shake the feeling that these symbols were trying to tell us something urgent. As our plane descended into Lima, I felt a mixture of excitement and dread that I couldn't explain. The journey into the Amazon was grueling. For days, we hacked through dense jungle, following GPS coordinates that led us deeper into uncharted territory. Our local guide, an elderly Shipibo shaman named Ayahuasca, seemed increasingly nervous as we approached our destination. He spoke in whispers about the forbidden place and voices of the ancestors, but I pressed on, driven by an obsession I couldn't control. When we finally reached the site, my breath caught in my throat. Rising from the jungle floor was a massive stone structure, easily the size of a city block, completely covered in intricate carvings. But these weren't random decorations. They formed a continuous narrative that spiraled around the entire building like an ancient comic strip. As I traced the symbols with my finger, a chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just art, it was a warning. The symbols told a story of advanced beings who once walked the earth, masters of technology that made our modern achievements look primitive. They showed flying vessels crossing oceans, massive cities connected by what appeared to be energy beams, and most disturbing of all, a great catastrophe that wiped them from existence. The final panel showed survivors scattering across the globe, carrying with them fragments of their knowledge. But the most shocking revelation came when I noticed that the star patterns carved above each scene didn't match our current night sky. Using astronomical software, I calculated backwards through time until the constellations aligned perfectly. The date that emerged made my hands shake, 12,847 years ago, the exact end of the last ice age. As night fell over our camp, strange things began to happen. The jungle, usually alive with sounds, fell completely silent. Our electronic equipment started malfunctioning, compasses spun wildly, and several team members reported vivid dreams of towering figures beckoning them deeper into the ruins. Ayahuasca refused to sleep, sitting by our fire and chanting protection prayers until dawn. On our second day at the site, I made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden beneath centuries of moss and debris, I found an entrance leading deep underground. Against the protests of my team, I descended alone into what I can only describe as an ancient laboratory. The walls were lined with crystalline structures that still pulsed with a faint, otherworldly light. In the center of the chamber stood a device unlike anything I had ever seen. A sphere of unknown metal floating above a platform covered in the same symbols we had found above. When I approached the sphere, it began to glow brighter, and suddenly the chamber filled with holographic images. I watched in amazement as the history of a lost civilization unfolded before my eyes. These beings, tall, graceful, with eyes that held depths of wisdom, had achieved what we could only dream of. They had mastered energy, conquered disease, and even learned to manipulate time itself. But their greatest achievement was also their downfall. In their quest to push the boundaries of reality, they had torn a hole in the fabric of space-time itself. The hologram showed me the moment of their catastrophe. a brilliant flash that shattered their world and sent massive tsunamis racing across the globe. Those who survived knew they had little time before the Earth itself would shift on its axis, plunging the world into an ice age that would last millennia. The survivors made a desperate choice. Rather than trying to preserve their technology, which had proved too dangerous, they decided to preserve their knowledge in a different way. They scattered across the Earth, embedding themselves within primitive human tribes and slowly, carefully passing down fragments of their wisdom through stories, symbols, and sacred sites. The hologram showed me something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't the first time such a catastrophe had occurred. Earth had experienced these cycles of rise and destruction multiple times throughout its history. And according to the calculations embedded in the device, we were approaching another critical point. As I stood there absorbing this impossible revelation, the device began to pulse more rapidly. The symbols on the walls started glowing brighter, and I realized that by activating the machine, I had triggered some kind of beacon. Somewhere out there, others were receiving this signal, descendants of the survivors who had been waiting for someone to unlock this ancient message. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Every major mystery in human history, the sudden appearance of agriculture, the impossible precision of ancient monuments, the universal flood myths found in every culture, all of it was connected to these ancient survivors and their desperate attempt to prepare humanity for what was coming. But the most terrifying part was what the device revealed about our present moment. The same cosmic forces that had destroyed the previous civilization were stirring again. The increasing natural disasters, the magnetic field anomalies, the strange behavior of our sun, these weren't random events, but the early warning signs of another great shift. As I stood in that underground chamber, surrounded by technology that shouldn't exist, watching the story of humanity's true origins unfold before my eyes, I realized that I had been chosen for something far greater than academic discovery. The survivors hadn't just hidden their knowledge. They had been waiting for the right person at the right time to uncover it. The device showed me locations around the globe where other chambers like this one were hidden, each containing pieces of a larger puzzle. Sites beneath the Sphinx in Egypt, deep under the ice of Antarctica, buried in the mountains of Tibet, all waiting to be discovered by someone who could read the signs and understand the urgency of the message. But with knowledge came responsibility. The ancient survivors had failed to prevent their own destruction because they had become too absorbed in their power, too disconnected from the natural world they were meant to protect. They were leaving it to us, their distant descendants, to do better, to use their knowledge not for domination, but for preservation. As I finally emerged from the chamber, the first light of dawn was breaking through the jungle canopy. My team was frantically packing, claiming they had received urgent messages to evacuate the area immediately. But I knew the truth. The beacon I had activated was already drawing attention from those who would suppress this knowledge, just as they had suppressed similar discoveries throughout history. On our hurried journey back to civilization, I made a decision that would define the rest of my life. Rather than publishing my findings through academic channels where they could be buried or discredited, I would take the truth directly to the people. The ancient survivors had entrusted humanity with their final message, and I would ensure that message was heard. But even as I speak to you now, I know that powerful forces are working to silence this revelation. Strange accidents have befallen other researchers who were getting too close to the truth. Funding for related projects has mysteriously dried up. Key evidence has vanished from secure facilities, yet the knowledge continues to spread, passed from person to person like the ancient symbols themselves, impossible to completely suppress. The chamber in Peru was just the beginning. Over the past 3 years, I have visited 17 similar sites around the world, each revealing another piece of the cosmic puzzle. What I have learned has convinced me beyond any doubt that we stand at the same crossroads that faced the ancient civilization. We can choose to repeat their mistakes, letting our technology outpace our wisdom until we destroy ourselves, or we can heed their warning and choose a different path. The signs are all around us if we know how to look. The increasing intensity of solar storms, the acceleration of magnetic pole movement, the unprecedented climate changes. These are not just random events, but the early stages of the same cosmic cycle that has played out before. We have perhaps a decade, maybe less, before the critical threshold is reached. But unlike the previous civilization, we have been given a gift, their knowledge, their experience, their desperate warning carved in stone and hidden in the depths of the earth. We know what's coming, and more importantly, we know what we must do to survive it. The answer isn't in building bunkers or hoarding resources, but in remembering what the ancient survivors learned too late, that we are not separate from nature, but part of it. Not masters of the universe, but its caretakers. Only by working together, by sharing knowledge instead of hoarding it, by choosing cooperation over competition, can we navigate the coming transformation. As I stand here today, looking at the evidence spread before me, I am filled not with despair, but with hope. The ancient survivors didn't just leave us warnings. They left us tools, technologies that work in harmony with natural forces rather than against them. They showed us that even in the face of cosmic catastrophe, consciousness can survive, knowledge can be preserved, and wisdom can be passed down through the ages. The lost tribes of the earth were never truly lost. They became us. Their blood flows in our veins, their memories whisper in our dreams, and their knowledge waits in the depths of our planet for those brave enough to seek it out. We are the inheritors of their legacy, the culmination of their desperate hope that someday, somehow, their children would prove wiser than they were. The choice is ours now. We can remain blind to the signs, dismissing ancient wisdom as primitive superstition, while we race toward the same fate that befell our predecessors. Or we can open our eyes, acknowledge the truth that has been hidden in plain sight for millennia, and choose to write a different ending to this cosmic story. The earth is speaking to us through earthquakes and storms, through the migration of animals and the behavior of the seas. The ancient survivors are calling to us through symbols carved in stone and wisdom preserved in sacred traditions. The question is not whether we will listen, but whether we will act on what we hear. I have dedicated my life to uncovering this truth, knowing that it may cost me everything I once held dear, my reputation, my career, perhaps even my life. But some truths are too important to keep buried, some warnings too urgent to ignore. The lost tribes of the earth trusted us with their final message, and I will not let their sacrifice be in vain. The greatest mystery of human civilization is not where we came from, but where we are going. And that choice, that ultimate decision about the fate of our species and our planet, lies not in the hands of governments or corporations or ancient aliens, but in each of us, here and now, in this critical moment when the past and future converge. The ancient ones are watching, waiting to see if their children have finally learned to listen to the whispers of the earth and the warnings written in the stars. The answer to that question will determine not just our survival, but whether we deserve the incredible gift of consciousness that has been passed down to us through countless generations. This is my testimony, my warning, and my hope. The truth is here for those who seek it, hidden in plain sight, waiting to transform not just our understanding of the past, but our vision of what we might yet become. The lost tribes of the earth were never truly lost. They live on in us and through us. Their greatest dream of wisdom conquering destruction might finally come true.